Good evening. Welcome to Africa 96 TV. My name is Bill Clinton. Today, through social media, political rallies, conferences, there's a group of people who are calling for the unification of African continent to be one country. They want all the 54 countries in Africa to unite and form one country. They believe if this happens, then Africa is going to be great. They believe this is going to make Africa politically and economically great. They are calling and advocating for an African country having one army, an African country using one currency, one passport, whereby you can travel across the African borders without being interfered with. They are calling for an African country having one army and one flag, an African country that is using one capital city. Do you think it is an imagination or a reality? Do you think this is possible, especially in this current generation? This is something that never happened during the colonial time, especially in Addis Ababa, when the first and founder president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, called for the unification of the African continent, but it never happened. Do you think this is going to happen? This is the topic of discussion tonight. Welcome to Africa 96 TV. My name is Bill Clinton. To begin with, let's know who is Africa. Who is Africa? Africa is the second largest continent in the world, bordered by Asia, Europe, and America. On the western side, Antarctica, bordered with two oceans, Atlantic and Indian Ocean, two seas, Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea. Africa is having a population of 1.4 billion people, with Nigeria in West Africa being the most populated country in Africa, having a population of over 200 million people. Algeria being the largest country. Ethiopia and Liberia were never colonized, making Ghana be the first black African country to get independence. So the question is it possible for all these people, all these 54 countries in Africa, to be united and be ruled by one president? In each and every African country, there are several problems ranging from unemployment, civil wars, pandemic, drought and famine, unrest, dictatorship. There are some parts of Africa which does not recognize the independence of other territories. On the other side, there are some states within some countries in Africa that want to be fully independent, and therefore they want to separate from the original state. To begin with, let's start with the southern part of Africa, that is South Africa. South Africa has recorded the highest unemployment rate in the world, meaning in South Africa, the highest number of unemployed persons is so high compared to any other country in the world. South Africa is crying, or South Africans are crying, because they are being affected by high rate of illegal immigrants from the neighboring countries and also from other parts of Africa. So South Africa itself is being affected by two major problems: one, unemployment, and two, high rate of illegal migrants. In Central Africa, DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, has been affected by civil wars in the parts like Katanga, Kivu. Right now, DRC Congo and Rwanda are intense. The two countries, Kigali and Kinshasa, are not in good terms in terms of what is going on. In Kenya, after every election year, after every 5 years, there's always a demonstration. That is a problem facing Kenya, despite her economic growth. In Somalia itself doesn't recognize Somaliland because Somaliland wants to be fully independent. South Sudan has experienced civil wars since her independence in 2011, when it separated from Sudan. In the recent past, Sudan, Khartoum, was having insurgency. In Nigeria, the northern part of Nigeria has been affected by Boko Haram, the terror kidnapping people and asking for ransoms and certain amount of money so that they can be released. In the same country still, the Biafra state want full independent state. They want to recognize themselves as a fully independent country and want to separate themselves from Nigeria. In the recent past, we have witnessed several countries, especially French colonies in West Africa, expressing coup d'etat each and every time, of which since this year we have not experienced it, which is a positive change to our countries in West Africa. In the Northern Africa, Morocco doesn't recognize the independence of Western Sahara, while Western Sahara recognizes herself as a fully independent state. Still in the northern part of Africa, there has been a problem of people drowning in Mediterranean Sea as they try to seek the greener pasture from African countries to the other part of the world, that is in Europe. So all these problems have been affecting Africa and even terrorism in various parts of Africa. So all these problems, just to mention a few, drought and famine, there are many countries in Africa which are expressing the effects of drought and famine. There's no food. Every time is drought. On the other side, there are countries which are being affected by dictatorship. In fact, there are some presidents which have been in power before I was born. Until today, they're still in power. Over 30 years, over 40 years, they have been the rule of their countries. Their countries need change, but they cannot let that change be, because they're the one who should rule. There are problems of pandemic. Those are natural calamities. A pandemic like Ebola, we have witnessed it before. But those are something that cannot make Africa not unite. So all these problems that are being experienced by each and every country at different capacity and at different time, those are just a few that have highlighted. What are other problems that have not highlighted yet are affecting these countries in Africa? Yes, with all these problems facing these countries, other people are saying that Africa should unite so that they can be a better economically and politically. They believe if Africa is united, then African United Country or United States of Africa can withstand the heat and pressure from the Western world, especially from United States of America and some of the European countries like England, France, Germany, to mention a few. Now the question is, with all those problems, civil wars, unemployment, poor governance, terrorism, other countries want to separate from others, other countries doesn't recognize other independent states. Do you think when all these countries with all these problems are combined together, they are going to make a brighter country? Do you think with the high rate of unemployment in South Africa, high illegal immigrant in South Africa, plus unemployment in other countries, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Egypt, all countries, do you think how the rate of unemployment is going to go up? With that rate of unemployment, when it goes up, do you think to solve it is going to be much easier than to solve it at a country level where it is right now? What about civil wars? How are we going to solve the issue of the civil wars which has been experiencing in our countries? Does African countries uniting to form one country is going to solve the issue of civil wars, the issue of coup d'etat, the issue of inequality in terms of currency? Imagine having one currency in one country. If you cross the border to another country, just 100 meters from the country of your origin, you're using another currency, which somehow doesn't make sense. It is good to have one passport, good to have one currency, good to have one army, but do you think it is good to have one president who is going to rule the entire African continent? In Africa right now, there are two people who have been calling and really advocating for the unification of the African continent to be one country. These two gentlemen are one, Pielo Lumumba, Professor Pielo Lumumba from Kenya, and EFF leader Julius Malema from South Africa. The difference between these two gentlemen is that the latter is a politician, while the former is not a politician. So even though they are calling for the unification of African continent, but they are calling it at perspective angles and perspective views. And Prof. Lumumba, in most of his speeches, if you listen, is trying to call for the unification of African continent and the reasons why African continent should unite, and is giving the solutions to the problems facing African countries. On the other side, Julius Malema is calling for the unification of African countries, but he doesn't give the solutions for the African problems facing African countries. What Julius Malema is saying is that the current territories that we have in our countries, that is the borders, were created by white people so that they can divide Africans and make us hate each other. However, the truth is, hatred is an individual. Racism is an individual. People hate each other, even within the country. Every country there, you can find one tribe hating one tribe, maybe due to politics, or it is something which has happened before. But the truth of the matter is, these territories has existed even before the white men came into Africa, and therefore Malema using territorial division by the West to divide Africa doesn't make that sense as a call for unification of Africa, because even here in South Africa, where Julius Malema comes from, there were kingdoms like Shaka Zulu Kingdom. In fact, Shaka Zulu himself invaded other territories and kingdoms and captured people who were slaves in his kingdom. You understand? So I think the issue of territories should not be used as a co-factor to unite Africa. But I think, on my view, or in my point of view, even if all these countries unite to form one country, having one currency, one passport, one flag, one army, still there's going to be a great problem than we have right now. It might sound crazy, but that's the reality. What we need to be great in Africa, I don't think unification of African countries to have one country. We can have one currency, fine. We can have one passport, is fine. But on my side, I think we should just remain as countries as the way we are right now, so that each country solve their own problems. That's my take. That's my view. What we need to do in each and every country, for us to solve our problems, we must be accountable. We must elect leaders who are not selfish, leaders who are not being elected on their popularity or on their tribal based. The issue of tribal politics is one of the problems which has caused African backwards, because even if these leaders commit some type of crimes, for example, corruption and other things, they cannot be brought to justice, because if you touch a certain leader in Africa, the reality is you are not touching that leader as an individual, but you are attacking his supporters nationwide, and mostly his own tribe, the tribesmen. So it is very difficult to attack, even to bring into justice, a leader who has committed crime. That's why a lot of people these days, some do go to politics because they know once you are there, no one is going to bring you into justice compared to just a normal citizen. So this has made our leaders to be bold enough to do anything that they think they can do, because they are going to be protected. So I think before we call for the unification of the African countries to form one country, let's look at the accountability of our leaders, the transparency of our leaders. Who are we electing to represent us at the national level? Are they people who we are electing based on their merits, or They are people that we sympathize with them to lead us. This is my take. We might differ in our opinions, but on my side, I don't support the unification of African countries to be one country. What I call for is the usage of or introduction of one currency, one passport. For example, in East Africa, where I come from, we are used out of almost 8 countries which are forming East Africa. We have East African passport, which every year you renew it. You can travel around East Africa with one passport, and right now we are trying to introduce one currency so that you can use it across the East African region. This has promoted somehow trade or movement and trade so easily in Eastern African nations. I think if we introduce one passport, one currency, and then most of all, we have transparent leadership, accountable leadership, If we have ethics in our leaders, we are going to go far, and in fact, we could have been far than where we are right now. Thank you for watching Africa 96 TV. My name is Bill Clinton, and for those who are our returning viewers, welcome and thank you so much. For those who are watching us for the first time, welcome and be part of Africa 96 TV. If you have not subscribed, remember to subscribe, hit the notification button, and like and share the video. In the comment section, I'm asking the question, do you think African countries should unite to form one country, or we should just remain the way it is? And why are you saying like that? Let's engage in the comment section. Thank you so much. Have a great day.